Singapore's job market is finally picking up, with vacancies rising for the first time this year.
13 years after her disappearance, a man has been charged with the murder of teenager Felicia Teo Wei Ling.
Hey, it's official. Eating at hawker centres is now internationally recognised as being a key part of Singaporean culture. Welcome to The Big Story, coming to you live from the Straits Times newsroom. I'm Olivia Quay.
I'm Harianto Diman. You can subscribe to the Straits Times channel so you never miss a single episode.
Well, after a tough year for the economy and many Singaporeans, there are now clear signs of an improvement in the labour market. For the first time this year, the number of job vacancies has increased.
According to the Manpower Ministry's third quarter labour market report, there were 49,600 openings in September. This is a big rebound from a decade low of 42,400 vacancies in June.
Another sign of recovery, significantly fewer employees, around 34,000, were placed on short work weeks or temporary layoffs in September compared to 81,000 in the previous quarter.
The resident employment level for Singaporeans and PRs also jumped back to near pre-pandemic levels, with foreigners accounting for almost 9 in 10 of the total employment decline between January and September.
Meanwhile, over 3,000 jobs are available in the financial services sector, with 9 in 10 for PMETs. Most vacancies are in roles like compliance officers or risk analysts, as well as software, web and multimedia developers. Other in-demand roles are management and business consultants and financial analysts.
In other local headlines, a man was charged today with the murder of a female arts student more than 13 years after her disappearance. 35-year-old Ahmad Daniel Muhammad Rafai was accused of murdering Felicia Teo, who was 19 years old then, in the wee hours of June 30th, 2007 at a housing unit in Marine Terrace. According to court documents, Ahmad Daniel allegedly worked together with another man to commit the crime. The police said that Ahmad Daniel was arrested on Tuesday, and they are searching for the other man, who they believe is not in Singapore. The police are also searching for Miss Teo's remains.
From next month, employers must pay a one-time placement fee that used to be borne by incoming foreign domestic workers from Indonesia. This new ruling by the Indonesian authorities will add an extra cost of up to $3,000. But this also means new Indonesian domestic workers will now be able to come to Singapore debt-free. The choices are endless when it comes to our hawker centres, but Harianto, I want to know, what is the favourite food, the favourite hawker food?
My favourite hawker food would be laksa, actually. Is it considered a hawker food, laksa? Yeah.
Why not? Of course it is.
What about yours?
Nasi Padang. I just had some this afternoon.
Ah, okay.
Well, you know, we love our hawker fare, you love our hawker fare, and UNESCO recognises that too, as well as the entire hawker culture, by adding it to the UNESCO representative list of the intangible cultural heritage of humanity.
In the coming weeks, about 6,000 hawkers in more than 110 hawker centres across Singapore will receive a label indicating their new UNESCO status. They will be able to stick the labels on their stall fronts.
Well, multimedia correspondent Yo Sam Jo has more.
Behind me is Ghim Moh Market and Food Centre, a familiar sight and popular eating spot for Singaporeans, and now a delicious cause for celebration. Just last night, Singapore's hawker culture was officially added to UNESCO's list of intangible cultural heritage. Minister for Culture, Community and Youth Edwin Tong and Minister for Sustainability and the Environment Grace Fu were at the Food Centre today to hand out celebratory decals to hawkers and thank them for their contributions.
Well, hawker culture is so much more than just about the food. It tells us a bit about the history, the heritage of the food, where it comes from. It's also a gathering point for people from all walks of life, different races, coming side by side. And I think the hawker centre is itself a representation of what we are in Singapore. Different people from different backgrounds coming together harmoniously. And I think that is something that we should cherish and nurture. And it's a very beautiful symbol of what we are as a country.
It's very timely, particularly considering the important role that hawker centres and the hawkers have played in the last few months. It didn't close throughout the pandemic, and it provided the very essential food, nourishment, and also a bit of a social anchoring for Singaporeans.
To celebrate the global recognition, a 3-week SG Hawker Fest will kick off on December 26th. Hawkers and patrons alike cheered Singapore's addition to the heritage list.
I'm very happy because we are recognized. That's the most important thing. Because hawkers, usually people just come, eat and go.
I'm actually very proud, very happy that Singapore actually got it, and I hope that this can be a stepping stone for like young hawkers to actually emerge from Singapore.
You know, sometimes you go to the Cai Fan store, and then if you have favor from the auntie and uncle, then you'll be like, "Sell me, I give you more like roe or like vegetables and all." Yeah.
Hawker center, the food tastes nicer lah. They cook themselves, prepare the ingredient themselves. Not like those central kitchen you chunk out and just distribute to everywhere. So the taste there really a lot different.
They also like that kind of atmosphere, that very easygoing. I mean, not that kind of dining restriction, you know, like that kind of fine dining restriction. So you got to sweat, and then you can order a bottle of beer, and then people are themselves in a way easygoing.
Having hawker culture on the list commits Singapore to protecting and promoting it. The country will have to submit a report every 6 years to Unesco, showing the efforts made to safeguard and transmit hawker culture to future generations. And going by the crowd and food here at Ghim Moh today, Singapore's hawker culture is definitely here to stay. Yo Sam Jo for the Straits Times.
The Straits Times' food editor Tan Xue Yun is here to share more. Now, Xue Yun, the inscription is not so much about hawker food, isn't it? It's about the entire experience, the culture of, going to the hawker centre.
That's right. It's so much a part of our life, isn't it? We go to a hawker centre, we walk past a hawker centre, we have many opinions about hawkers, the food centres. So it's not really just about the food. In fact, the food is just a very small part of the whole thing.
Right. And Xue, in what ways will the recognition benefit hawkers? Because it doesn't seem like the benefits will be monetary.
Yeah, well, hence intangible, right? No, I think what it means for hawkers, right, is that the government is really committed to keeping this culture alive. It will do whatever it takes to make sure that it continues. So if you are a veteran hawker, here the entire government is now saying that we are going to do whatever it takes to keep this culture alive and to keep your livelihood safe, right? And then for people who maybe want to become hawkers, but then they keep thinking, well, the status is low, the hours are long, the slog is really hard. This is like a bit of a boost, isn't it? And if you do this and you do this well, you are going to be recognized for your efforts. And it's not just a matter of like, oh, okay, well, I'm just going to become a hawker and then no one's going to support me and then things are just going to be really hard. And, so there is guidance, there will be programs, there will be mentorships, apprenticeships, things to help aspiring hawkers be as good as they can get.
Right. Well, we're going to talk more about how each of us can sustain the hawker culture in just a little bit. But I want to find out from you, Xue, are there any benefits that the inscription will bring to tourism when Singapore can finally open to tourists again?
Well, that, when Michelin decided to bestow a star on a braised soy sauce chicken stall, overnight there were long queues, right? So you think about that multiplied by 6,000, because there are 6,000 hawker stalls in Singapore, and you imagine that this is going to be something that people will come to Singapore for, right? Not everybody is going to come here and just eat in Michelin-starred restaurants, and then we offer so much diversity and so much depth and breadth in our selection of hawker stalls, 6,000 of them. You can never hope to go to all of them in one lifetime.
Sure, keeping the inscription means we have to preserve hawker culture because Singapore now has to submit a report every 6 years to Unesco to show efforts are made to safeguard and transmit hawker culture to future generations. So what would it take, you reckon, to sustain hawker culture going forward?
Well, I think the most important and most urgent task is really to attract a new generation of hawkers, people who are not becoming hawkers just because they're desperate for jobs, right? But people who actually have passion and who maybe don't have the know-how yet, but the government can help them with schemes and programs and mentorships and apprenticeships. So attracting new blood, I think, is very vital to keeping it alive. And then, of course, it's not just what the government can do for hawkers, it's what we Singaporeans can do for hawker culture as well. I know a lot of people would rather go eat in a fast food joint than sit and sweat it out in a hawker center. But if we don't patronize hawker stalls, if we don't support them, if we don't, make hawker food a part of our lives, then culture will become irrelevant to our lives, right?
Yeah.
Well, as with every topic, there are some naysayers, and these people are saying that perhaps the UNESCO inscription isn't deserved because hawker culture isn't unique to Singapore. So, Shreya, what's your take on that?
Well, a lot of countries have street food, developed countries, not so developed ones. But I think in Singapore, you have, it's sort of like part of our landscape. It's not sort of like a bunch of food trucks collected in one area, or maybe people hawking food by the roadside. It's the center itself, right? Every HDB town has many, hawker centers, and each of them would offer more than 24 choices for people who want to eat anything under the sun. You can find it in a hawker center, and you can eat in relative comfort. And you can be sure that hygiene will be there because the stalls are graded. So I kind of think that all of these elements make it very unique to Singapore, and I can't think of another place that would have something like a hawker center and a hawker culture that kind of has been built up over the decades.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Shwe, for setting aside time to speak with us. We've been speaking to the food editor at the Straits Times, Tan Sheryin. An update on the COVID-19 situation here. 24 new cases were confirmed today, the highest daily count since September 29th. None of today's cases were in the community and from within workers' dormitories.
All the new cases were imported and placed on stay-home notice or isolated upon arrival in Singapore. 13 of them are returning Singaporeans or permanent residents.
Meanwhile, the Health Ministry's Chief Health Scientist, Professor Tan Chaw Chuan, said that at least 80% of Singapore's population would need to be vaccinated to achieve herd immunity against COVID-19. Achieving this helps protect those who cannot be vaccinated because of their age or their medical conditions.
Well, the topic of herd immunity was also raised in a separate Straits Times webinar today on COVID-19 vaccines. Here's a snippet.
So if it cannot prevent infection, even though the viral load is low and the transmission may be lower, it means that we can't get herd immunity in the country because those who are vaccinated are protected, but those who are not vaccinated cannot be protected just because everybody else has been vaccinated.
The herd immunity question is very straightforward if you have sterilizing immunity. Right. Okay, then the math is very simple. It's 1 minus 1 divided by R naught, right?
Sorry, can you explain that a little bit, please?
So we know now that R naught, or R0, R naught, is the number that tells you how infectious this virus is. And we know now that it's about 3. If you don't control this disease, it's about 3.
So one person can infect 3, roughly, okay?
Yep. So if you want to stop SARS coronavirus 2 from being transmitted, is 1 minus 1 over 3. In other words, 2/3 of the population. As long as there's sterilizing immunity, you're done. That's it. Right. There's no more epidemic, right? Now, because we don't know that, what mean is that we may have to vaccinate more than 2/3. But because of the reduce transmission from vaccination because there's less cough and all that, right? I think you would still achieve herd immunity. It's just that the number isn't 2/3. You may need 80, 90%, right? So, but I think if enough people are eventually vaccinated, I think we can get back to normal.
Yeah, what worries me are people who may be immunocompromised. Does this include people who are on dialysis, for example? Because Singapore has thousands of people with kidney failure who are on dialysis. Can they take the vaccine?
I think eventually we can get there. It's just that right now, like I said, we will eventually want to vaccinate children because children tend to play with grandparents and looked after by grandparents even, right? So you want to vaccinate children so that the chance of re-exposure to the virus amongst the elderly is reduced. But it's just that because of how fast this thing has happened, the trials have naturally focused on the more vulnerable population first. But the plan would, of course, eventually be to cover the rest of the population not currently covered by phase 3 trial. I think eventually, and that also brings up the point that we cannot rest on the laurels and say, okay, we've got 2 or 3, possibly 3 vaccines, that's it, we can stop the rest. Because you need the rest to come through to make sure that at least even if Pfizer's or Moderna's vaccine cannot be used in the immunocompromised population, something like that, then eventually there will be a vaccine that can be used in those populations.
Right. So some of those that are not on the market yet may be better for certain groups of people.
Right.
So they should not stop their work. Right.
Exactly.
But on the herd immunity front, I would like to say that herd immunity is helpful as a number, but I think it's a little bit of a mistake to focus on that. Because on the expert committee, we have basically recommended that as comprehensive a coverage should be done. We would like to vaccinate as many people who are eligible as possible, as long as they're willing to do it. It is voluntary. So the reason for that is because herd immunity helps prevent sort of an out-of-control outbreak in the community. But what it doesn't prevent is if you, for example, came home from a trip overseas and you had a vulnerable elderly parent or a family member at home that was unvaccinated, it might not spread it in the whole community, but that family member who's vulnerable could still get infected from you. So in a way, by having enough people who are vaccinated, you will be unable, in a sense, to bring it home to the people that you care about. So we want to make sure that we vaccinate as many people as possible, rather than relying on that concept of herd immunity. Right. Because there will be people who cannot take it, and there will be people who, even if they get the vaccine, their immune systems are less good and they can't mount enough of a protection or response to the vaccine. And in that sense, when enough people take it, then we'll drop the amount of infections bouncing around, and they're less likely to stop a bullet, so to speak.
The full webinar is on the Straits Times' Facebook and YouTube platforms. Now, besides herd immunity, the panel of experts also tackle vaccine safety, allergies, as well as answer questions submitted by the public.
A quick look at the global headlines. South Korea reported a record number of coronavirus deaths today, with 22 additional deaths as of midnight on Wednesday. This is up from a previous high of 13 earlier in the week. Overall, the country reported 1,014 new cases, including a daily record of 423 in Seoul.
Mackenzie Scott is giving away her fortune, donating more than $4 billion in 4 months after announcing $1.7 billion in gifts in July. The world's 18th richest person outlined the latest contributions in a blog post on Tuesday, saying she asked her team to figure out how to give away her fortune faster. According to the Rockefeller Philanthropy advisors, Ms. Scott's gifts this year approach $6 billion, which, quote, has to be one of the biggest annual distributions by a living individual to working charities.
The tennis season's first Grand Slam, the Australian Open, has been pushed back to February 8th from its original start date of January 18th. Players will now arrive in Australia from January 15th to serve 2 weeks of quarantine. Earlier reports said they would have to remain at designated hotels, but would be allowed to practice and exercise at tournament grounds for up to 5 hours a day.
Now, if you're not busy with Christmas shopping this weekend, we have some suggestions on what to do. The big movie, which is out today, is of course Wonder Woman 1984.
Yep, the first film became the highest grossing superhero origin story of all time, and this sequel is set in the 1980s at the height of the Cold War. It sees Gal Gadot's character, Diana Prince or Wonder Woman, face off against two new villains played by Pedro Pascal and Kristen Wiig.
The Straits Times' film correspondent John Lui gives WW84 5 stars out of 5. So I have to ask John, a perfect score, why?
It's not a perfect movie, but it's a very strong and very well crafted and very touching, emotional movie.
Right. So like you said, it's not the perfect movie. So was there anything that was missing in the movie that you thought would have made it even better?
Well, you know, Gal Gadot, I don't know if you agree, she's gorgeous, but she's not the best actress. So her Wonder Woman is kind of a blank. But luckily, I think the producers, the makers of this film were smart enough to surround her with good actors like Pedro Pascal and Kristen Wiig.
Right. So, Olivia, do you agree that she is not the best actress?
I was just saying to Haryanto off camera that I don't think Gal Gadot is the strongest actress, and I actually do love Kristen Wiig a lot in Saturday Night Live and of course in Bridesmaids as well.
Right. Now, John, looking more broadly at the DC movie universe, now DC movies have been in the shadow of those from the Marvel franchise. Do you think Wonder Woman signals a new era for DC movies, and can these movies carve out its own special quality in the superhero genre?
Yeah, I think since the Christopher Nolan Batman films, DC movies, Aquaman, Justice League, Superman, they've all been trying to find their footing. But I think since Aquaman of 2018, they're getting there. And this Wonder Woman that is so fun to watch is a sign that things, I mean, there have been a few steps back. Like, for example, maybe Birds of Prey wasn't everyone's cup of tea. Justice League and Batman vs. Superman Suicide Squad, they weren't great movies. But I think Joker was a good movie. Aquaman was good. And so I think we're on the right track.
All right. Thanks so much for joining us today, John. That was John Lui, film correspondent at the Straits Times. He's given Wonder Woman a perfect rating, and you may want to catch the movie for yourself. It's out in cinemas today.
Also happening this very weekend is a Back to Life concert. It's Singapore's biggest live concert since March, and it also marks the reopening of the Sands Theatre at Marina Bay Sands.
Homegrown singers Benjamin King, Sazari, Narelle and rapper The Lion City Boy will perform on the first night. Singers Charlie Lim, Aisha Aziz and Kayana will perform on the second night.
Let's hear more from our music correspondent Eddino Abdul Hadi. Dino, how have tickets been selling for this concert so far? Given that it's our biggest concert since the pandemic.
I've reached out to the organizers. They don't have any exact numbers to give us right now. But from what I understand is when you go to the ticketing website right now, and the Sands Theatre has 3 floors, right? So you can choose where you're going to sit. The first floor, a lot of tickets are already unavailable. So that's a good sign. So it looks like, the fans of Charlie Lim, fans of Benjamin King, fans of Sazari, and the other singers who are playing, they're coming through. They're buying the tickets. Yeah.
That's really good to hear. But from a musician's point of view, Dino, how does it feel to perform in front of 500 people in a venue that is meant for more than 2,000 people?
Okay, from what I understand, you look at the ticketing website, right? How they're spacing out the audience. So we know that groups are not going to be sitting together. People are not going to be sitting together. They're going to have like empty bubbles around them, right? So it will still kind of look like the hall is filled up because the fans are going to be sitting on the first level, on the second level, and the third level. It's just as there's space in between them. So I think instead of if there's only 500 people and you put them all on the first floor, it will look like there's a lot of empty space on the second and third floor and all around them. But you space them around like that, I think it looks pretty good from stage. But one thing I tell you, I've performed on stage before, and when the lights are shining on you, the lights is usually off on the audience itself. You can't really see the audience. You can't tell. You can hear them. Yeah. So whether that's people in front of that, or 500 people, a lot of times you won't be able to see them.
Right. And Dino, the concert is just a day away. I'm pretty sure the singers are excited. How are they preparing, considering that this is possibly their first concert of the year as well?
Yeah. I haven't had a chance to speak to them personally, but I was looking at Charlie Lim's his socials, and he's very excited. He's been posting almost every single day about the show, about how excited he is to do a live show again, because it's been streams, it's been online gigs all the way without any live audience in front of you. And this is what he said. He says we're all really excited as we approach this new normal, and he calls it a silver lining, and he puts a rainbow emoticon there. And he says that the whole crew and I are working tirelessly to bring y'all the best live show that we possibly can this weekend. See you there. So you can tell that this man, he hasn't seen his audience in front of him for a very long time. So he's very excited.
Wow, exciting stuff indeed. Well, great to speak with you, Eddino. Now we've been speaking to music correspondent Eddino Abdul Hadi. And of course, the Back to Life concert is happening tomorrow and on Saturday. You can check the tickets out at the Marina Bay Sands website. There will be lots more ideas as well for your weekend plans in tomorrow's paper in the Friday pages of the live section.
Well, for more news and videos, visit straitstimes.com and subscribe to our YouTube channel by hitting the red button below.
I'm Haryanto Diman with Olivia Quay. Join us tomorrow for more stories on A Big Story.